This is Sports 225, Baton Rouge's longest running and best TV show. Now in its 18th year, if you count those 16 years of Sports Monday, and we do. Sports 225 is brought to you by Breck. Remember, it all starts at Breck. Presented by Raising Cane's, home of One Love. Now, here's your host, Lee Feinswald.
And so it is, Sports 225, and the things we have lined up tonight, well, we'll get our usual prep football segment with Hunt Palmer from BayouBengalsInsider.com and Cade Wassan from 104.5 ESPN. That's ahead. And also, I got a chance to visit with Josh Dorosic, or Dvorak, or no, it's Dorosic, the offensive lineman for LSU, who's going into his 6th year and one of the brightest, most engaging guys on the team, and asked him to break a few things down for us and talk about the season ahead. But first, in studio, as he is at the beginning of almost every year, it's not the first show, but he's always here, Scott Rabalais, the sports writer and columnist for The Advocate. Hello, sir.
Hello, Lee. Good to be with you again.
We are putting this show together on Monday. So on this Monday, we've already been to the Les Miles Luncheon. We've done player interviews, and we're doing it a day or two early because of hurricane prep. Nothing like a hurricane during football season.
You know, it seems to happen a lot, you know, but it's really just been the last couple of years. We've had some disruptions, though, with Katrina, with the North Texas game back in 2005, Miles' first game. Got pushed it to later in the season. You had that Appalachian State game that they had to play at 10 in the morning.
Yes, my favorite starting time, though, for sporting events. Of, 10 o'clock, good.
Because of Gustav, and now this one. So hopefully this one won't be too disruptive, but it does add an extra layer of uncertainty and unease to the start of the season.
The 05 one with Katrina, of course, nothing was the same and normal for a long time. But of course, you know, the LSU ended up going out to Arizona State, right. And you remember, if I have this right, came home and played Tennessee on a Monday
because of Rita. Yeah.
Right. And the Monday, of course, was the old Sports Monday. At least Sports 225 is on Thursday. Hopefully, by the time you're seeing this, Isaac will have come and gone. But that was the hottest day in the history of the planet, if I recall, that day when LSU played Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And a couple of things that day. I remember I was freelancing for USA Today, and I had that story about the LSU fans throwing bottles and pelting the Tennessee bus. You remember? Pelting. I love the word pelting. And old Philip Fulmer's wife was in that bus or something. And then that was the game that LSU lost in such a way that you were like, whoa, this is a train wreck. You know? Exactly.
I mean, they barely survived that game at Arizona State, did all this commotion over that. Then they had the big lead against Tennessee and blew it and lost in overtime. You're like, oh, this is going to go off the rails. And then I think they trailed the next week at Mississippi State early, gave up a long pass. But then after that, they reeled off 9 straight wins, including a win at Alabama, who was undefeated at the time, made it to the SEC championship game, lost, but wound up winning their bowl game and was number 5 in the country. So it ended up, in the end, you have to give Les Miles some credit for being a good crisis manager. Sometimes he creates his own crisis, there are times. But in some of these situations like this, he's done a pretty good job.
Well, you get thrown into it, and those situations and how you react. In his case, you don't normally think of football coaches as great humanitarians, but a good family man who looked out for all the other families of the LSU football community. I got the impression it looked like a nursery school up there during Gustav, because from all the kids they said that came and stayed at the football ops building. You know, they always have electricity there, by the way. They got big generators.
They know what's important.
Yeah,
or it's important to keep the lights on.
Got to break down film even if there is a hurricane.
That's right.
But during the time of Katrina on campus, you remember how strange that was? I mean, the Assembly Center was turned into basically the world's largest triage, and there were armed guards with big guns walking around. There were helicopters coming and going.
I lived near the campus, just a couple miles away, and for days and days and days, morning and noon and night. I mean, all times of day, helicopters and sirens, all over the place. It's like, what country have I woken up in? This is totally, strange, something you expect like out of Lebanon or something like that. It was surreal to say the least. And then to have to hop on a plane, myself and Carl Dubois used to write for The Advocate with me. We hopped on the plane, and we hustled up, tickets to go to Phoenix and cover the LSU Arizona State game in Tempe for their opener. And then you come back and there's Rita, and so hopefully it's not going to be anything to that degree this year.
Well, they're a challenge in so many ways. I remember too, just to finish hurricane talk for this segment, a story about a lot of the LSU football players who are from New Orleans, who during Katrina had people come and stay with them. So they had families and, you know, aunts and uncles and mothers and fathers and siblings and a lot of dogs. I remember it was a Sharon Carey telling me that story. There were like 4 dogs in this 2-bedroom apartment, and none of them were his, you know, and other people, you know, I'm sure you have a couple of stories that resonate with you from that time.
Well, very much so. The biggest one was writing about the fact that Fats Domino stayed at Jamarcus Russell's apartment, because Jamarcus was dating Fats Domino's granddaughter at the time, and people didn't know Fats lived in the 9th Ward. I mean, he grew up there. Yeah. He still kept a residence there, and he had been taken from there to the Superdome, and then taken from there to Baton Rouge. He wasn't injured or anything like you talked about being a triage, but he was taken to the Assembly Center, and Jamarcus saw him there, and then took him to his apartment off campus, and people for a time didn't know what had happened to Fats Domino. They were like, you know, did he perish in the storm? You know, is he missing? You know, what happened? And finally, Jamarcus Russell called the sports information officer. She said, "I've got Fats Domino in my apartment." They rushed over and got a photo of him about to leave, and I got to write that story. And I don't know if I used a picture in the paper. I used a picture in my book, LSU Football, and the picture of Jamarcus and Fats that they got right before he left. And you know, it was such a heavy time, obviously, with all the human tragedy going on. And that was one of the few bright moments. It was nice to get to write something that, you know, had kind of a happy ending out of that story. So that's the one I'll always remember.
We begin the back half of the show. I'm back in studio with Scott Rabalais. He covers LSU for The Advocate. He's also a columnist and a great features writer. And you've won an award for features before. I think, is this correct? Your biggest award was, I think it was called the Green Eye Shade Award, and it was a story you did on Jerry DiNardo.
Yeah,
that would be your most prestigious big award.
Yeah, I guess so. It was kind of a regional award. It was the Green Eye Shade. I went to Atlanta to accept it. You know, flew to Atlanta. It was kind of a big deal. You know, people from all over the Southeast, you know, done stuff. And placed in the top 10 in Associated Press Sports Editors APSE a couple of times. That's neat to do. So if you stay in this business long enough, though, you're an award-winning journalist. You're going to win something.
An award. Even I won a couple back in the day. I get asked this a lot. Who's your favorite interview subject of all time?
My favorite interview subject?
I always have to think about it, because you don't want to just jump and say one. I mean, you know.
Favorite in terms of most engaging, or just it can be anything.
You know, people always say that. Who have you interviewed who you like the most, or what was your most engaging? Like, I'll tell you, for me, I mean, because most of the stuff that I've done has been LSU stuff that I've enjoyed the most and been around the most, but I would say Skip Bertman and Shaquille O'Neal. You know, and Shaq, not necessarily because of what a great interview he is, although he's always pretty good, but just because how engaging he is, and how it's just like you're talking to Shaq. I mean, he's the only you know, his name is a one name, like Ali, Shaq. And then Bertman, there's nobody better.
No, I enjoy it. Some of those enjoyable things that were done was getting to go to Omaha, and not the game days, but the practice days. You're hanging out in the dugout with Skip, and he's telling one story after another. And it's not a lot of stuff you can print, but just for good stories afterwards, you know, that you tell, you know, out of print. And it's, you know, it was just fun, you know, just fun to be around him. But I don't think and of course you covered him a lot more extensively than I did, but just being around him, no one's been more interesting to cover than Dale Brown.
I knew that was coming. I knew it.
I mean, he's the most interesting person, enigmatic, you know, controversial. I mean, you know, whatever adjective you want to throw at him is probably going to fit. And there's no one like Dale, and there won't ever be again. You know, certainly. He's a truly unique, truly an American original. And you don't run into many people like him. I mean, really.
Right. Like we got less than a minute. You said, obviously, just in the things you just said, we know LSU Alabama is a tough game. You said South Carolina is obviously a tough game. Arkansas is a tough game. LSU regular season record? Have you made a prediction? 11-1. And which one are you picking for the defeat?
Boy, I don't know. That's a tough one. I know our friend Randy Rosetta picks them to lose to South Carolina. That's probably a good bet, but they're gonna slip up maybe somewhere against someone that you don't expect. So I'll say maybe at Auburn.
All right.
But they still can go to the SEC title game and play for the national championship. And you can go 11-1.
You can do it with one loss. Scott Rabalais, you can follow him on Twitter at Scott Rabalais, and in The Advocate at theadvocate.com. Thanks to everyone who was on the show earlier. Thank you for watching. I'm Lee Feinswag. This has been Sports 225.
At carnival time by Baton Rouge Bay, that's the site of my story. At Spanish H-Town Mall.